In today's video, we need to talk about multiple potential upcoming snowstorms. I know we've been talking about the spring weather, we've been talking about the severe weather, but winter is not necessarily all said and done. There is still more potential threats on the way that we're going to be discussing today, alongside those spring-like conditions and severe weather threats that are still there for the central and the eastern states. There's just some snowfall opportunities mixed within. Now, before we get into things, I do want to mention that we are looking for new commercial clients for Prestige Weather. We do have a link to the website in the description and pinned comment down below, but also a Calendly link, which you can click right away and schedule an exploratory meeting with me. We can discuss potential packages for your company. It's very affordable, typically between $100 and $200. Sometimes we go up to $300, depending on what you're looking for. If you do any sort of work outside within your company, whether that be construction, landscaping, snow removal, we have you covered. We can cover the rainfall, the snowfall, temperatures, anything you need. We are willing to be flexible and make that happen. Again, that's why the prices vary so much, because we have so much available to you guys. Be sure to set up a meeting. We can do custom requests as well. So literally any weather information that you need, we can set up a way to make that happen. Set up a meeting with us today. Can't wait to talk with you. Let's dive into things and take a look here at the upcoming storms. Again, potential snowfall, severe weather, thunderstorms, coastal storms, warmth, cold. It's all coming over the next 10 to 15 days. Let's dive into tomorrow first things first. And what we see is already an area of activity happening here. We have one frontal boundary here really closing in on the eastern states. Not only that, right now it's been raining very hard here in Virginia for what seems like about 24 hours, or at least 12 hours, somewhere between there. And that is this big coastal system that is around. So it's not a very strong low, but it is there, and it is leading to a lot of flooding rainfall. What's going to happen, though, is this sweeping cold front is going to roll through, and it is going to basically push everything offshore, and we will end up with drier weather before it is all said and done. So let's reach towards Wednesday, and what we see is we have this kind of frontal boundary extending towards the next low. We have our secondary low underneath right here, and then a cold front underneath this. So we have a lot of warmth trying to spread in to this top frontal boundary. We have a lot of cooler air trying to swing underneath below that secondary low, and this is leading to a lot of swirl. I do expect potential severe weather, especially underneath and to the east of this low pressure system. So this area that I circled in there is of particular concern for potential severe weather. Let's just dive towards Thursday, and what we see is that this low that develops along the front really moves offshore and starts to move up the coast. Now located offshore of New Jersey, it's still bringing pretty heavy rainfall here to a lot of the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. Even some snowfall here for New England. I promise you that's not what we're talking about when we say potential snowfall. We'll dive into that in a little bit. We do have our next low pressure system already developing across the plains. As you can see, this brings a new surge of potential severe weather with it, as we already see storms firing up for Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. Again, that's going to be for Thursday afternoon. Let's keep going, though, and reach towards Friday on March 8th. And we see that there isn't really an organized low yet developing with this one. I would say the lowest pressure is somewhere between Texas and Oklahoma. It's all just trying to get together, and it will get its act together eventually. But there's just a lot of really precipitation around, is what I would say, mostly in the form of what seems to be heavier showers or thunderstorms here. That's going to be for Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. Potentially even more states than just that, but we don't have all day here. Let's move towards Saturday on March 9th, and what we see is that there is an organized low now around Kentucky or Tennessee there. We see some precipitation underneath. I don't think it's a cold front. We don't have a lot of cold trying to move in with this. There's just a lot of moisture involved here with this system, and I'm not seeing any prominent features yet, which is pretty common with these weaker low pressure systems. Usually it's once they start to strengthen up that you can really make out where those frontal boundaries are. And it happens pretty late with this one by about early on Sunday morning. I would say about 5 a.m. here on Sunday, March 10th. We see it's down to a 990 in kind of western Pennsylvania. We do see a little bit of a warm front and cold front look along this one here, where we can see the cold finally catching up to that bottom frontal boundary. We do see warm air rushing to the north here, basically surging that warm front to the north. And we're not going to see the cold air move to the coast until this storm is basically completely offshore. So we're going to be watching for that. We do have potential for thunderstorms again on the eastern and southern end of this low pressure system. This time of year, that's going to be important to remember. I think this is something that doesn't get talked about a lot, but weather can be pretty simple when you put it in terms like this. But in general, when you have a stronger low pressure system with warmer air to the east of it, then if you're to the east or the south of that low, that's going to be the main area to watch for severe weather oftentimes, or most times I should say. It's not true all the time, of course, and there is definitely a lot of variables there, but we've seen storm after storm here hold true to that sentiment, really, and that's going to be to the south and the east of these low pressure systems is where that cold front is typically located, and that's going to be your main area for severe weather. Not to say that severe weather can't happen outside of that area, but that is usually the primary focus area for the worst of those potential severe weather impacts. Let's keep going towards Sunday afternoon, and really we end up seeing this storm almost all but said and done by this point. We do have this cold front underneath. We do have a warm front now. And actually, we do have some wintry weather once again here for the Northeast and portions of the Mid-Atlantic, as we have a pretty strong ridge out west for the central states, and then this semi-intense trough for the east here. What's really holding it back is we still have some cold air back here in the northwest. So this ridge isn't able to really ramp up. That would have caused this trough to dip a lot further south. But because we have some colder air present in other parts of North America, there's not quite as much cold air to go around for this thing to really dive southward. So we see this be much more of a northeast and north central trough. And that's likely why we got snowfall for the interior here of the Northeast. Otherwise, we'd maybe be talking about areas further south and east seeing potential snowfall. Of course, this is about, how many days out is this? About 5 or 6. This is definitely in enough time for some changes to happen. I don't think we're going to see anything too drastic, but things could certainly change. Monday on March 11th, we see some leftover snow showers as a result of this low, but that's going to basically be coming to an end by that point. By Tuesday on March 12th, again, a lot quieter here in the east. Also, things are relatively warming up, I would say, by this point also. So we're seeing the return of the nicer weather, probably aided by this high pressure system located over Tennessee there. We also see more storms moving onshore to the northwest now, so potentially a sign of troughs and storms returning to the west, which would cause, again, that surge here in the east. We talk about that all the time, but we could be seeing that try to set up for the midpoint of the month. And honestly, by the time we reach the 14th here, it does look like that could be happening. We do have a pretty decent trough there over the west and a pretty decent ridge here over the central and the eastern states here. So this is kind of the look. I would say the only drawback here is that we do have, again, more mild air present along that west coast. If we would have seen a trough all the way along that western area, I bet this would have been a more intense ridge out east. But regardless, this is fairly decent for a trough in the west, ridge in the east pattern. Another thing to note here is that we have a low developing over eastern Colorado again. So you could potentially see this low move to the north, develop a cold front underneath that swings along this part of the nation, bringing that potential thunderstorm and severe weather activity underneath, and also potential snowfall to portions of the upper Midwest and Great Lakes. Again, all potential, and I'm basically speculating what a model is going to do outside of its range here, so a pretty dangerous game there that I'm playing, but I do believe that could be what's setting up here. Let's move on to the GFS model here and just see its kind of rendition of everything. And we see that coastal storm move through. We see the central storm develop there, even head eastward. A little bit more snowy there, as you can see, for the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. We actually have a lot more cold air present here. It's dipping towards the deep south states. We also see the low forced a little bit further eastward there. So we really get some potential snowfall in there. Looking a little bit more decent on this model as opposed to that European model. We see another central storm develop here around the 14th, 15th time frame. We get that swinging cold front underneath here, so low here over Canada, cold front underneath. Likely to see potential thunderstorms and severe weather in these areas. Maybe not stretching that far north, but certainly kind of for these deeper south and southeast areas, I would say. As we move on, we get a more major cold air mass moving in, which again, these are fairly common in March, not as much as February or January, obviously, but certainly possible. We get this really intense cold shot, mostly due to this ridge out west. And this does allow for this major storm here to produce some snowfall over the Ohio Valley. And as you'll see here, eventually the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic as well, as we get kind of a quick shot at some snowfall within Pennsylvania, New York, and into New England. Definitely take this with a grain of salt. It is beyond 300 hours, but interesting to see. And again, this isn't like we're talking about April or May here. This is still mid-March and certainly could be very, very wintry. We've seen that historically, and it's not too crazy to think that that would be a possibility. Now, when things get really interesting is that we see this cold air stay pretty present throughout the east, and we actually see a coastal low develop along this, and we get a little bit of a more southern snowstorm here impacting areas like Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and into New Jersey. Again, a little bit speculative here, a little bit far out, a little bit far-fetched with a snowstorm this far south. I'd say this is a little bit unusual for this time of year, but still not anything that really sounds that crazy in my opinion. We eventually see that one innocently move out. It does appear like we are on the verge of cold in the west and a little bit more of a ridge returning to the east here, as this storm already appears to be growing a cold front and warm front dynamic here, which would encourage that warmth to surge further to the north. On the other hand, this would mean that this low likely would move eastward, bringing the cold front with it to the coast and eventually resulting in colder air in the east. So you can see what I was talking about a while ago when I was talking about how progressive this pattern is. We're just constantly seeing it move from west to east with those cold air masses, and we're not seeing anything last more than about 4 or 5 days as far as cold or warmth anywhere really for the most part. So a very progressive and very, very interesting pattern in my opinion. The total precipitation overall here, or better yet, total snowfall. I guess we're skipping the total precipitation. Let's not do that. Let me get this up real quick. So we see here, I got to get the 12Z run up. Perfect. There we go. So the total precipitation, we see a whole lot here in the northwest of the nation. No surprise, as most of our storms are originating from this area. Also no surprise that with the coastal storms and repetitive cold fronts moving through these areas, that we're seeing an above average amount also in the east here, as we're seeing multiple low pressure systems, multiple cold fronts, certainly a recipe for higher than normal precipitation. Now let's move back to the snowfall, where we're probably going to have to reset things. Never mind, it worked perfectly. There we go. So we see a ton of snowfall, obviously, out west here, mountainous areas, and even some low-lying areas there out west, with the progressive storminess that is just going to keep bombarding this area as it has been all winter time long. Although I will say this is a large amount, it's not quite as large as what we saw weeks ago, so I can say that for sure. We see a bit in the northeast here, but still below average snowfall, I would say, for most areas there. It's really this GFS model that really jumps off the screen at me. Very similar amounts out west. We, however, do see a pretty big uptick versus that European model here on the snowfall for the east, where we're seeing quite a bit here, especially in the mountainous areas, which again is a little bit more realistic. I mean, even though the low-lying and coastal areas could hypothetically see snowfall in March and it wouldn't be anything too crazy, to see this model showing mostly higher elevation areas see larger amounts definitely bodes well in the confidence for me, and tells me that this model does have a pretty firm grasp of the pattern and overall how this previous winter has gone, where elevation has played a massive, massive role in these types of things. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. You may have noticed that I wore the same shirt for 3 or 4 videos in a row. That is because I pre-made all of them for my birthday. My birthday was March 1st, and we did a bunch of pre-made seasonal forecasts that I had prepared for you guys over the course of 3 days. I hope you enjoyed those, by the way. I know probably a few people were wondering, like, why is he wearing the same hoodie every single day? Definitely that's because they were all filmed in one day, which was very, very fun, by the way. Be sure to subscribe. We do upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload, so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.